Okay, can everybody hear me? Yes, you should be able to hear me now. Okay, right, good. Okay, can you hear me now? Yep, it looks like it. Okay, that's good. Right, well, I don't know why this keeps on happening. Each time I switch off, it seems to do this very irritatingly. But there we are. Sally, you need to know what the weather is like. It gives you a little background here. Also, it's my way of checking that everybody can actually hear what I'm saying. Right, good morning, everybody. Say good morning to all those people who I said good morning to before, so I don't need to do it all over again. Good morning, Father Alexander, your prayers. And I say good morning to Namba, and I can see there's Dino there, and Elizabeth and Tatiana, and Jim Bob and Jovan, good morning. Thekla and Ian, Stella, there we go. Okay, I think everybody, I say good morning to everybody now, Gary as well. 10 minutes of silent prayer. We've only had 4. Okay, actually, that'd be much easier for me. I used to be a prison chaplain, and most of the chaplains had quite a lot of work to do. But there was one chaplain who used to come every week, and he used to do silent meditation with the men for an hour, and got paid exactly the same as the others did. I just think, oh, that's a good one. That one is. I wish I had that idea. I wish the Orthodox just sat there in silence for an hour. It's far easier than having to think of something to say. Anyway, there we go. Oh dear. Right. Is Brother Daniel there? I can see you offered him a unicorn. If the horses are not playing like they were yesterday. Yesterday, after I came off, the 2 ponies out here started to play. They were galloping around and around the paddock here, kicking up their legs and dancing around and bucking and rearing and neighing, and it was wonderful, really absolutely beautiful to watch, really. Oh, that is Brother Daniel who's doing that. He's adding things on. He's putting emojis. Yeah, I see what he's doing now. Yeah. See no evil. It should have been hear no evil, or hear no good, maybe. Right. It's not sunny. No. It's grey, a beautiful opalescent sort of sky. Lots of different shades of grey, but then I'm slightly colorblind anyway, so maybe it's more grey than it really is. I mean, it's less grey than it is out there, that I can see. Anyway, here we go. Enough of weather and all sorts of other nonsenses. Here we go. Good morning, Judith. So, chapter 6. Ho ho. Now, yesterday we finished off with the Lord having a heated discussion with the authorities, and he's defending himself for apparently breaking the Sabbath. Morning, Sally. And at the end, we sort of more or less see that he's thinking about the Jewish authorities in the same way as they would have thought about Pharaoh in Egypt. Okay, that these people won't see the Lord's signs, just as Pharaoh and his ministers would not see the signs of Moses either. And we're about to get a sort of reenactment of the Jewish salvation history, particularly the signs, the Passover meal, the crossing of the sea, and heavenly food, which they don't actually receive, but they receive the Lord's teaching about heavenly food. Good morning, Valerie. So here we go. Verse 1 to 14. After these things, Jesus went over the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias. Then a great multitude followed him, because they saw his signs, which he performed on those who were diseased. And Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat with his disciples. Now the Passover, a feast of the Jews, was near. Then Jesus lifted up his eyes, and seeing a great multitude coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread, that these may eat?" But this he said to test him, for he himself knew what he would do. Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may have a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, there is a lad here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish, but what are they among so many? Then Jesus said, make the people sit down. Now there is much grass in the place. So the men sat down in number about 5,000. And Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to the disciples, and the disciples to those sitting down. And likewise of the fish, as much as they wanted. So when they were filled, he said to his disciples, gather up the fragments that remain, so that nothing is lost. Therefore they gathered them up, and filled 12 baskets with the fragments of the 5 barley loaves, which were left over by those who had eaten. Then those men, when they had seen the sign that Jesus did, said, this is truly the prophet who is to come into the world. Okay, there we go. Good morning, Mariana. Now, it's quite interesting. You start off in verse 1 with this little phrase here, after these things, Jesus went over the Sea of Galilee. Well, it's difficult to know, after these things, the argument with the Pharisees. But you'll see in a moment that it's quite a long time after these things. When he went over the Sea of Galilee, it doesn't say where he'd been before he went over, because you wouldn't need to go over it if you were going from Jerusalem to over the Sea of Galilee. Okay, that wouldn't be necessary. So it assumes that he's gone to Capernaum or somewhere already. That gives a clue for something that's going to happen in a moment. That is that you begin to notice that quite a spell of time has gone past. So talking a little bit like I do when I say to Brother Daniel the other day, there could be any time in the last 45 years. Now, over Galilee is the area that we'd now call the Golan Heights, which overlook the Sea of Galilee. If you get onto Google Earth and just look at that area, you'll see it's nice and hilly. And from certain areas, from various roads and things, up hills, you can see straight down into the sea. So you come off the sea, there's a beach, and then you can go straight up a hill. And this is the sort of place that these things were happening. I'm sure the fish came out of a nice little tin can of sardines or something. The 5 loaves have been quite small. Yeah, I don't know. There must have been. The boy's picnic. His mother, amongst all those 5,000 people, had the thought of sending him off to something to eat. And then in verse 2, then a great multitude. And you might remember from reading Mark's Gospel that multitude in this way here, no, it's better to visit the Golan Heights, Father Alexander, by Google Earth. I travel around the world in Google Earth. I see all sorts of things and hardly create any carbon footprint as a result. It's interesting, though, the pictures of the Golan Heights on Google were obviously not taken around about Passover because the grass is quite dried up. Anyway, this multitude in the Gospel is called an ochlos. Do you remember that unruly crowd? That's the way that the scripture writers use that word. A large, unruly crowd. And they've come up there. Why? Because they have seen the way the Lord heals the sick. Now, we haven't had more than one story of 2 stories of the Lord healing the sick so far. So this must be something. John is not telling us about this, but this must be something the Lord did quite commonly. And it actually brought together a crowd of people. They saw the signs, and John uses the word signs, which the authorities refused to accept. Okay, but they're only motivated by these miracles. Good morning, Corey. Verse 3, they go up onto the mountain. There he sat with his disciples. We're not talking about a hugely great mountain there. There aren't any, but a bit like up here. I might cross over the pond and climb up the hill to where I am now. So it's that sort of rise, a bit higher than that, 100 feet or so. Right, and it rises straight out of the lake. And then we get a very interesting thing that begins to tell us when this happened. It happened, verse 4, now the Passover, a feast of the Jews, was near. Well, the best date that we can put for Passover that fits in with everything else we know about the life of the Lord is this would have been Passover in the year of our Lord 32, which took place on Monday, April the 14th. So it's slightly before Monday, April the 14th, AD 32. If you've gone to that area of the world, you'll see that indeed in April the grass is nice and green. So all of that fits in quite well. But there's something else that's very interesting about that. And that is that in the last chapter, chapter 5, everything that happened there took place at Pentecost in AD 31. So 315 days have gone past without John feeling the need to say anything about them at all. Isn't that extraordinary? We have here in the monastery a biography of Blessed Seraphim Rose. We also have a relic of him too. Anyway, we've got a biography of him, which is an enormously thick tome that goes on and on about the slightest little thing that he did. At this point, he scratched his nose and rubbed his face. And John is not interested in any of that. He wants you to get the main points, the main signs, the main teachings of the Lord. And then he moves on. Okay, so this is a good one. We've had nearly a year ago, he was in Jerusalem for Pentecost, and he raised up the paralyzed man at the 5 porticos. And a year later, he feeds 5,000 people. An entire year disappears without anybody worrying about it. There are some people who think that it could have been AD 30, but that doesn't actually fit in with what is obviously the right date for Passover, when the Lord was crucified, which was Passover began on April the 3rd, AD 33, which was a Friday, and it started off that evening, between 5 p.m. in the evening, which then fits with everything, and the reason why it was so important for the Jews to have the Lord's legs broken and the other criminal's legs broken. So he died quickly. Okay, it had to be done before sundown. So it all fits together much better. AD 33, April 1st, Friday, Passover. April 3rd, rather. Okay, now keeping that in mind, that we've got Passover happening, it's a year before the Lord is crucified. Passover is about the liberation of the Jewish people, the Hebrews, from oppression. Has the sound gone off again? Is somebody could tell me? It's just you. Maybe it's just you. You switched it off? Okay. Thank you, Michael. I'm glad you said that, though, because if there's any problem, please let me know. So Passover, liberation from oppression. And in this particular case here, the law itself has become oppressive. Okay, so the law has become oppressive, and the Lord is leading the people back from out of oppression into the freedom of God. Remember what the Mother of God says: free to worship without fear. So without oppression, without being pushed down. Thank you, everybody, telling me you can hear me. That's good. No, don't apologize, please, Michael. It's important if you can't hear me. We've had an example of that earlier on this morning and yesterday, of course. Okay, so that then takes us on to verse 5. So we've got to have this idea of the Passover in our minds when we're reading all of this. Jesus lifted up his eyes. He saw a great multitude coming towards him. It's the Oikos again, that unruly group. Where shall we buy bread, he says to Philip, that they may eat? but he says this to test him, for he himself knows what he's going to do. So the church fathers are quite clear that Philip is being tested, not in the way of leading him into sin or leading him, destroying his faith, but as a way of increasing his faith by showing him they've got a problem there. Okay, we have a big problem. We've got all these folk and no food. What are we going to do, Philip? And Philip ought to know by now. He says, well, Lord, you know what to do. You sort out the problem. Now, that is actually a very important spiritual point there. So frequently we can find ourselves being a bit like Philip and the other apostles, seeing the problem but having no solution. It always irritates me, by the way, when I travel behind a car, a lorry or something. It says something like communication solutions or plumbing solutions or wiring solutions or all sorts of other things like that, where they have the solution. Might have been a good idea at one point, but now it's everybody. Oh, I can see SAS being dropped off from our local hill. From time to time we have a helicopter come and drops people off over there from the army, and they then have to make their way to somewhere else without getting caught. It's always quite exciting. We've not seen them for ages. Hovers most beautifully. Anyway, first aircraft I've seen actually for a long time. So if the faith has to be made stronger within Philip's mind, and like us, we often find ourselves with a big problem, and we need to find the solution. It's easy to try and say what Philip said. Well, I can't do anything about it. That's 8 months' pay. We can't do that. Even for everybody just have a mouthful, we couldn't do that. Instead of saying to the Lord, okay, you want me to do this, you solve the problem. I can't do that. So there we go. But the Lord knows what he's going to do. 5,000 people is a lot of people, and it's actually 5,000 men. So there are probably women and children there as well. Actually, in the Greek it says anthropos, which is people. But at that stage, almost certainly they would. Yeah, there they go. At that stage, almost certainly they would have thought about it as being 500 men plus all the women and children. And we know there's one boy there anyway. Some years ago, when His Beatitude the Patriarch was newly enthroned, I was invited with a large number of other people to go to Balamand for a huge conference. And on the Sunday, there was a Divine Liturgy in which about 5,000, between 5,000 and 8,000 people turned up. It completely filled the stadium at Balamand University. It was fantastic, far too hot, but fantastic. A wonderful experience. The thing I remember about that most of all, just thinking about everybody having a small amount, was the size of the lamb that was on the discos. Now the lamb is the bread that is cut out of the prosphora, that is then consecrated by the bishop or priest, and well, by the Lord, of course, really, but the priest's hands are used, and is then cut up into small pieces and shared amongst the entire congregation. And this lamb was enormous, like this and like that. Normally they're tiny, maybe about this big by that big, that sort of size, a couple of inches square, but this is vast. And I remember thinking at the time, yes, it's like the Lord feeding the 5,000. The chalice was also absolutely enormous. Probably helped in that the patriarch had been to Russia just beforehand and had probably gone shopping one day and picked up all sorts of clerical toys to go home and play with. It's what clergy do when they go abroad and they find some nice ecclesiastical shop. You can guarantee that the church will be filled with all sorts of pretty little knickknacks when they come home from their holiday. Anyway, there we go. Yes, Margaret, you must try not to be an Oklos. Part of the importance of this, you'll see in a moment, is the way the Lord moves from chaos into order. And we've had that within Mark already. Jim Bob, I'm not sure. I know they did have. Brother Daniel's the person to ask about that. He's an expert in all things Jewish. Okay. It could well have been Father Parthenios who did the shopping. I know he was there. Yes, it does. It does taste exactly like regular bread. It's very, very plain. It goes stale extremely quickly. And actually, you need to make it go stale, otherwise it's too crummy. If you make it on Thursday, which I always do, and then leave it out until wrapped up in a cloth until Sunday, it reaches just the right level of staleness to be able to cut it nice and evenly and cleanly. There you are. There's a bit of priestcraft for you. So you got all these folks sitting there. Enter Apostle Andrew with a small boy. It's a Pedarion, and Pedarion is a little lad with 5 loaves and 2 fish. Skipjack sardines or something. Now the fathers have an absolute field day here. It's one of those things where we like this. And the green grass is about all flesh is as grass. They're lying on it to show that they are overcome by material things. They are a crowd to show that they are chaotic, and so on. And here they say the loaves are the 5 Old Testament books, the Old Testament law. Well, maybe the loaves are the 5 carnal senses, the 5 books of the law. And then they say, well, of course, they're barley loaves, which are very rough food for peasants. These are people who have not yet entered into the glory of the kingdom of heaven, where they're going to have wheat loaves, and so on. And then the fish are being the Jewish people being enslaved by both royal and priestly government, or the fish are the prophets and the Psalms, or the 2 natures of Christ, and so it goes on and on and on. If you look at a prostra, though, you'll see that on the top of it you've got 5. Let me go and get a seal. I could actually get a prostra. I've got one in here. Here's a nice prostra. Frozen one. This is a very thin one. I think I'll only keep it for demonstration. It's quite difficult to use. But there we've got a nice prostra. You can see it's got sort of 5 loaves, so 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 5. So the lamb is this one here you cut out in the middle, and it says on it Jesus Christos Nika. So Jesus Christ is victorious. So those are the 5 loaves, and it's made out of 2 loaves, one sitting on top of the other one. You can see there. So there's the two fish, and the priest will cut this one out, and that's what then becomes the lamb. That's what I was talking about. So you can see roughly how big an ordinary sort of lamb would be. This would be for quite a big congregation, and normally this loaf would be 2 or even 3 times the depth of this. Okay, and you then cut out other bits. So take from this bit here. Which way around am I? This bit here, usually you cut out for the bishop or metropolitan. Put that onto the viscose, and then traditionally out of this one here you cut out for the living, and this one here for the departed. But nowadays what you tend to do is you cut out all of that section there, and you make a cross for the living and the departed going across it like that. This one is very much a sort of Greek style one. The Antiochian style ones will just have they're that sort of size, but they'll just have the lamb printed in the middle, and sometimes 5 times, and you take out particles from different ones. Okay, there we go. Put that back in again. I can feel it beginning to defrost. Good old-fashioned Blue Peter fashion. Here's one I made earlier. Back into the freezer to become the body of Christ at another stage. So you've got all of those things that people are saying about. And then in verse 10, it says something really interesting. Lots of green grass there. I said already about the grass, what the fathers say about it. So now it says, so the men sat down. Okay, so we've had twice now. The people are now no longer, the Lord said, make the people sit down. So the people sat down. They're no longer an unruly crowd. They are an oklos. They are now people. They're anthropy. They sit down, run about 5,000 of them. And then you have a sort of description of the Divine Liturgy. Verse 11, and Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to the disciples to those sitting down, and likewise the fish, as much as they wanted. Okay, and here you've got this one part that's not there, and that is the break part. But you have got a sort of typical liturgical form. Take, give thanks, distribute to the disciples, and then the disciples distribute to the crowd. It's quite interesting as well, of course, because the boys' food, which was kato, is now ano. So it's gone from below to above. This is one of the things that John keeps on pointing out within the Lord's working. It's gone from below to above, from ordinary food to now a sort of Eucharistic food. Okay, so rather important there. And it's also interesting because some of the fathers then point out something else that's interesting. There's a heresy called Manichaeanism, which was very dualistic. So everything heavenly was good and everything earthly and material was bad. Interestingly, I heard a professor on the radio talking about Christianity and the body only yesterday. And she described Christianity in entirely Manichaean terms. She misunderstood it completely. Okay, Christianity is not anti the body. Christianity is not anti-materialist. Anything but. Christianity is not anti this current life. We are passionate about God's creation. Passionate in a good sense, that is. Okay, we live ascetically because we are passionate about it. It is so important that we are ascetical about it. Okay, and the fathers point out that if indeed material things were evil, as Manu proclaimed, then the Lord would not have created more bread and more fish, because the bread and the fish, which are material things, would therefore be evil. Okay, so nice little way that they use that little bit there. And then it says in verse 12, so when they were filled, everybody is filled. And it's got that feeling again of being filled to the brim. And John is deliberately using this word and using it in this way to make you remember, oh, there was another sign, wasn't there? That sign where he filled the water pots to the brim. There was nothing stingy or half-hearted about feeding them. They weren't just fed so they could stumble off back home again. They were fed to the brim. And the idea is he gave everybody so much wine, they had ample wine. They had been legless for days. And now he gives them so much food that they're also fed to the brim. Okay, and there's two things that are really important to hold together, especially when we read the rest of this chapter. Everybody's filled. You've got to remember the water pots. And then what do? They gather the remains. And that then looks forward into verse 27 here. In verse 27 it says, do not labor for food which perishes, but for the food which endures to everlasting life, which the Son of Man will give you. Okay? So they collect the food to remind them that this food, the heavenly food, will not perish. Very important idea, that one. So the apostles pick up 12 hand baskets, and not huge baskets, but they're 12 hand baskets, one each, for the 12 apostles, for the 12 tribes. And we've got to bear in mind that this is now nearly Passover. So this is a type of new Passover the Lord is doing. and therefore we have a sort of new Israel that has been created out of this oklos, which is now anthropy. Okay, so the people have gone from being an oklos, a disordered crowd, into being people. And it's these people, these anthropy, that the Lord is going to lead out of oppression. The Jewish authorities are still in Jerusalem. They're not going to be led out of oppression. They can take it or leave it, and they're going to leave it. But the Lord is going to lead these people out of oppression. Then verse 14, this is where we're going to finish. Then those anthropy, when they had seen the sign, Simeon, that Jesus did, he made, and that same word made for the third time, fourth time now, it's been made. The idea the Lord has created this sign, said, this is truly the prophet who is to come into the world. Okay, but they're motivated by having full bellies. Truly the prophet. They're no longer oklos, but people. They recognize Christ as being a prophet, but they recognize him the wrong way. We're told later on in verse 15 that they want to make him king. We're not going to go into that today. We'll carry on with that tomorrow. Okay. Yeah, there we go. What do people say? Elizabeth, Blue Peter. Ah, yes. I call Buster Shep. My mother, who's quite forgetful now, she says, you have a dog, don't you? I said, yes, we do. What's his name? I said, Buster. Well, what sort of dog is he? I said, do you remember Blue Peter, Mum? Yes. Do you remember Shep? Yes, I do. Well, he's just like Shep. Oh, now she knows. But I have this conversation nearly every day. Yes, I made that Prospero, and I've been making them for quite a long time, 30 odd years, so it's time I ought to be able to do the odd one or two. Happy Australia Day, John. Father Alexander. Yes, some churches cut the antiron into tiny pieces. So stingy. Use more bread and have it larger. You don't need just one Prospero, many. If you go to Lebanon or Syria or some typically Antiochian place, you'll find that each Prospero is about the size of the one I just showed you, even bigger, and they tend to be slightly spongy and slightly cake-like. The helicopter's now gone, and slightly cake-like. And each piece of Prospero that is actually handed out to the people is about the size of this box here. So quite a large amount of Prospero given to each person. Even that they will hand out whole Prosperos, because they'll go and buy 40 or 50 of these Prosperos and bring them to church. And other people will bring a stack of Prosperos. So you'll often have stacks of Prosperos dotted around the church, a meter or so high, all around the altar. And for several minutes, the servers are bringing Prospero for the priest to bless. That is a bit of a pain in the neck, but bringing them to bless while he's trying to do other things at the same time. Okay, so this idea, yeah, but it should be generous. I can remember a Western priest once filling this quite large chalice up to the very brim with wine. And I said to him, I was a deacon, Anglican deacon at the time, I said to him, there's rather a lot of wine, Father. And he looked at me and said, said, the Lord said, drink, not sip. There is something in that. There should be a generosity about the way we give ourselves to other people, in the same way as the Lord is generous about the way he gives himself to other people. He didn't say, okay, you can all have a sip of wine. Let's have enough just for the toast. He didn't say, okay, well, give them just enough bread that they get by. He filled them to the brim with bread and fish. Did you notice also at the end that the fish were not mentioned, only the bread? And that again is to give you the idea that Christ is the bread of life, which he's going to be coming on to in a moment. Okay, Jovan? Oh dear. Thecla, no, you won't know Blue Peter. You'll have to get onto what's it called? YouTube. Well, we're on YouTube now, and put in Blue Peter episode Elephant. Okay, Blue Peter episode Elephant. That's one of the funniest things I've ever seen on television. I remember seeing it for the first time. Yes, Jovan, don't cut the bread too small, unless you're going to try it for people to put into those little prosper bags and take home. But each person should be able to have a good-sized handful to take with them so they can eat it during the week and save it and all the rest of it. Okay? Oh, good morning, Christos. God bless you. Little Prospera, yeah, that's also a good thing. Russian-style ones where everybody puts in a Prospera and gets one back. That is a good thing as well. Okay, so, right, there we go. God bless you all. I'm going to travel to Lincoln today. That's fine because I'll be going from here to there. When I get there, I won't be seeing anybody. So I shall still be isolated, but I'll be isolated in a different place. It's just that I think it's good for the priest to, as it were, incarnate himself in the place where his parish is, at least from time to time. So, have a lovely day, everybody. Thecla, have a nice night. You sent me a message as I was going off to sleep last night. I worked out for you, it must have been about 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening. Okay. They are not really. In our archdiocese, they're not allowed. The priest will allow us the bishop rather will allow us to serve in our own homes, which is why I can here, and I'll serve 2 liturgies while I've been here. Next weekend I'll be in Lincoln, and I'll pray there, and then not in the church though, at home, and I might live stream it from my sitting room or somewhere, and then after that I'll come back for the following weekend, serve the liturgy and so on. Okay? Yes, the elephant episode is just absolutely glorious. There are lots of things in Blue Peter that are hilariously funny, but that was good. Right, Michael, the little Prosperon, yes, they also have a seal on, but it's just the central part, the Jesus Christ is victorious part. Jesus Christos Nika. Okay, righto. Well, you're very lucky in Greece. God bless you. Do go and look up Blue Peter Elephant episode and have some tissues ready so you can wipe your cheeks as you laugh like drains. Right, God bless. Your prayers. Oh, I wanted you to pray for somebody called Julian. So Julian, he's Romanian. He's in the ICU unit in well, it doesn't matter where he is, but he's in the intensive care unit because he's a young man. He's got a wife and a young child. He's suffering terribly from COVID at the moment. We've been asked to pray for him yesterday. Okay, God bless you.